Welcome back to our channel, dear viewers, on this beautiful day. Our beloved show never fails to keep us on the edge of our seats, and today we have a deeply emotional and dramatic storyline to explore together. Let us dive right into the heart of the drama. As longtime viewers of General Hospital, we have witnessed our fair share of harrowing near-death experiences, but the recent spectacle involving Drew Kane at the pool has left me absolutely breathless. The sheer terror of watching a man who has already endured so much physical and psychological trauma suddenly fighting for his life in the water is a visceral experience that tugs at the heartstrings of anyone who has followed his journey over the years. I found myself gripping the edge of my seat as the scene unfolded, the tranquil blue waters of the pool transforming in an instant into a deadly trap. It is a stark reminder of how fragile life in Port Charles truly is, especially for a man who has been secretly suffering from debilitating, stroke-like symptoms due to the sinister drugging orchestrated by Willow. The vulnerability of Drew in that moment, thrashing and sinking under the weight of his own failing body, was profoundly difficult to watch, yet it was executed with a dramatic flair that only this soap opera can achieve. Just when it seemed that all hope was lost and tragedy was about to strike a devastating blow to the canvas, young Gio Palmieri emerged as an unexpected savior, plunging into the treacherous waters to pull Drew back from the brink of death. Watching Gio, a young man with his entire life ahead of him, risk his own safety to rescue a drowning man was nothing short of heroic. For those of us who have been watching for decades, it evoked memories of classic soap opera rescues where the pure of heart step up in the darkest of times. The sheer physical exertion and the frantic desperation in Gio's eyes as he dragged Drew's lifeless weight to the edge of the pool was a masterclass in tension. It was a moment that not only saved Drew's life, but irrevocably tethered these two characters together in a way that I fear will have massive, potentially devastating consequences for everyone involved. This harrowing rescue has birthed a deeply complicated and deeply concerning new alliance between Drew and his young savior. On the surface, one might expect this brush with mortality to serve as a profound wake-up call for Drew, a moment of divine intervention that would inspire him to seek redemption and heal his fractured life. Instead, what we are witnessing is the formation of a toxic bond disguised as immense gratitude. Drew is a man who operates from a place of deep trauma and a desperate need for control, and I firmly believe that he sees Gio not just as a rescuer, but as an asset to be utilized. The dynamic between them is fascinating, yet incredibly unsettling. Gio, with his inherent goodness and naivety, is completely unaware of the dark, manipulative undercurrents that drive Drew. As a critic, I must applaud the writers for this nuanced approach. It is far more compelling to watch a fractured man exploit a pure connection than to simply walk the predictable path of instant redemption. What makes this developing alliance even more tragic is the context of Gio's own personal journey. This young man has been on the fast track to becoming a bona fide music star, pouring his heart and soul into his art. We have watched him navigate the early stages of his career with a bright-eyed optimism that is frankly refreshing in a town as cynical as Port Charles. However, his newfound status as Drew's savior has suddenly thrust him into a completely different kind of spotlight. The music industry is ruthless enough, but entanglement with the corporate and often dangerous world of Drew Kane is a perilous distraction. I cannot help but worry that Gio's beautiful musical aspirations will be overshadowed or completely derailed by the heavy, suffocating gravity of Drew's chaotic life. The juxtaposition of Gio's pure artistic ambitions against the gritty, calculating machinations of Drew creates a profound, dramatic tension that keeps me incredibly invested, even as I fear for the young man's future. The most shocking aspect of this entire storyline is the chilling transformation we are seeing in Drew following his near drowning. Rather than emerging from the water cleansed and reborn, he seems to have been baptized in absolute darkness. He is reverting to old, ruthless patterns, adopting a cold and calculating demeanor that feels like a terrifying nightmare brought to life. For a character who was once defined by his honor and his struggle to reclaim his identity after the memory mapping trauma, this descent into villainy is both heartbreaking and utterly mesmerizing. It is as if the oxygen deprivation in the pool stripped away the last remaining vestiges of his moral compass, leaving behind a man who is solely focused on power, revenge, and self-preservation. As a longtime fan, it hurts to see Drew lose his way so profoundly, but as a critic, I must admit that a dark, unhinged Drew is a formidable force that injects a massive dose of adrenaline into the current narrative. This dark resurgence of Drew Kane has tragically positioned Alexis Davis squarely in his destructive path, turning him into her absolute worst nightmare. My heart aches for Alexis right now. She is already a woman, standing on the precipice of total emotional collapse. Having recently lost Christina to physical distance and having her relationship with Molly completely shattered by the explosive revelation of the Rick Lansing kidnapping, Alexis is more isolated and vulnerable than she has been in years. She is a mother who has lost her children to betrayal and deep-seated family secrets, and now, in her weakest hour, she must face the relentless, chaotic onslaught of a renewed and ruthless Drew. The cruelty of this timing is not lost on me. Drew knows exactly how to exploit weakness, and watching him circle Alexis like a predator is both terrifying and deeply compelling television. The chaos that Drew is inflicting upon Alexis is not merely a matter of petty disagreements. It is a calculated campaign of psychological and emotional warfare. He is deliberately pushing her buttons, leveraging every ounce of his influence to destabilize whatever little ground she has left to stand on. We have seen Alexis fight formidable battles in the courtroom and in her personal life over the decades, but fighting a man who no longer plays by any recognizable rules of morality is an entirely different challenge. I find myself shouting at the screen, urging Alexis to find her inner strength, to channel the fierce, brilliant attorney she has always been. Yet, the sheer exhaustion radiating from her is palpable. The writers are painting a devastating portrait of a woman under siege, and Nancy Lee Grant's portrayal of this profound desperation is nothing short of Emmy-worthy. Drew's actions are creating a maelstrom of madness that threatens to swallow Alexis whole. The most unforgivable aspect of Drew's new, dark trajectory is his chilling manipulation regarding his young daughter, Scout. A child should never be used as a pawn in the bitter, twisted games of adults. Yet Drew seems increasingly willing to make cold, calculated moves that directly impact her well-being. This is where my personal opinions as a viewer strongly challenge the direction of the character. It is one thing for a man to lose his moral compass in business or romantic entanglements, but to weaponize his own child is a line that, once crossed, makes redemption nearly impossible. He is using Scout to exert control, creating a terrifying new obsession that leaves those who care for the little girl in a state of constant, agonizing anxiety. It is a deeply disturbing development that adds a layer of profound tragedy to his character arc. The implications of Drew's calculations regarding Scout are sending shockwaves through the entire family dynamic. Alexis, who has always possessed a fierce protective instinct over the children of Port Charles, is finding herself trapped in a maddening situation where she is powerless to stop Drew's machinations. The nightmare of seeing a child caught in the crossfire of a father's descent into darkness is a narrative thread that resonates deeply with older viewers who understand the sacred duty of protecting the innocent. We have watched generations of families in Port Charles tear each other apart, and the collateral damage is always the children. Drew's current obsession with controlling Scout's environment and future is not born of love, but of a desperate need to dominate, and it is plunging Alexis into a state of frantic, chaotic desperation as she tries to intervene. As if the situation with Alexis and Scout were not dire enough, the dangerous ripple effects of Drew's actions are beginning to engulf others, most notably the beloved Emma Scorpio Drake. Emma has been serving as a grounded, empathetic sounding board for Gio, a legacy character carrying the immense weight and history of the Scorpio and Drake families. To see her suddenly thrust into the line of fire because of Gio's entanglement with Drew is incredibly distressing. Emma represents the bright, hopeful future of Port Charles, a young woman who has grown up before our very eyes. The idea that Drew's toxic orbit could bring physical or emotional harm to her is a terrifying prospect. It raises the stakes of this storyline exponentially, transforming it from a personal feud into a widespread crisis that threatens the legacy families we hold so dear. The growing danger facing both Gio and Emma is a stark illustration of how the sins and reckless behaviors of the older generation continuously infect the youth of Port Charles. Gio, with his musical dreams, and Emma, with her compassionate heart, are being dragged into a sinister game they do not fully understand. I find myself deeply anxious for these two. They are navigating a minefield laid by a man who has lost his way. The interactions between Gio and Drew, initially born of a heroic rescue, have morphed into a suffocating trap. Drew's chaotic energy is acting as a black hole, pulling the light and promise of these young characters into its crushing depths. As a critic, I appreciate the dramatic tension this creates, but as a fan, I desperately want someone to realize the peril these kids are in and intervene before it is too late. The narrative momentum right now is akin to a runaway freight train. The sheer speed at which this situation is escalating is breathtaking. We have Gio unwittingly binding himself to a monster, Drew embracing his darkest impulses and plotting over Scout, Alexis crumbling under the weight of this new, relentless nightmare, and Emma standing in the dangerous periphery. The writers have masterfully woven these disparate threads into a singular, cohesive tapestry of impending doom. Every interaction is laced with subtext, every glance loaded with unspoken threats. It is a brilliant, albeit anxiety-inducing era of General Hospital. The show is asking profound questions about gratitude, trauma, and the limits of maternal endurance, forcing us to confront the uncomfortable reality that sometimes surviving a near-death experience does not make you a better person. It simply makes you more dangerous. As we look ahead to the coming weeks, it is abundantly clear that a massive, catastrophic collision is inevitable. The tension between Alexis's desperate need to protect her family and Drew's unyielding drive for chaotic dominance cannot be sustained indefinitely without something or someone breaking permanently. Will Gio realize the true nature of the man he saved before his own life and musical career are destroyed? Will Emma's legacy connections provide her with a shield, or will she become a tragic casualty of Drew's warfare? And most importantly, can Alexis summon the fortitude to survive this unprecedented assault on her sanity and her loved ones? These are the questions that keep me awake at night, analyzing every scene for clues. The storytelling is rich, layered, and unapologetically dark, honoring the complex history of these characters while pushing them into terrifying new frontiers.